I'm in a mood right now where if I have to say the word compression one more time, be that in regard to jet engines or image compression, I'm gonna puke in my pants. You heard me. So let's do something else. Let's go back in time to when this was actually an atheism channel, which technically is what I meant for it to be all along, but for some reason I went on like a year-long tangent. Hey, I peppered it in though, right? It wasn't just conspiracy theories. I had that video about Theophilus McPherson where I pretended I was a turkey. That was about arguments for religion and stuff, technically. Kinda, I guess. Alright, cut me some slack. I need a break every 7 years or so, okay?
I just want to share some thoughts with you today regarding what are the implications of denying God? What are the implications of adopting atheism, as Hamza described, or naturalism by extension?
Alright, sure. I gotta admit, I'm still not feeling 100% into this. But then again, when I was a kid, I used to go down to the river in like March, and it was fucking cold. Like, you'd dip your toe in there, you'd already feel cold. And you'd have to kind of shuffle in over the rocks and hope you didn't fall over. And then, you know, eventually you're up to your knees, and then, okay, you're up to your thighs, and then, oh god, it's right below your balls. Oh my god, it's right below my balls. Okay, I'm gonna go for it. And that was the hard part. Once you got past that part, you just jump in. Point being, I wasn't exactly into dunking my balls in super cold water either, but once I got in there, it felt great. I'd swim around for hours. It was awesome. So let's get ready to dunk our balls in this.
Let me just quickly define those terms just so we're on the same page. When we talk about atheism generally, there's many definitions, but it's safe to say we can work with this definition, which is that it's to deny God or gods.
The word deny has some connotations I don't really like, but I can live with it though. Yeah, fine.
However, the atheist may leave the door open for something out there. But a naturalist is a bit more hardline. A naturalist is someone who would say, well, it's all physical. There's nothing beyond the physical. It's a closed physical system and everything can be explained via physical processes, right? So there's no room for anything beyond the physical. And even if there is something out there, it has nothing to do with this physical material existence.
Sure, I mean, the definition can vary, but as long as we specify that's the one we're going with, that's perfectly fine by me. And I'm actually kind of glad that you chose to make a distinction, because back when I made videos about this all the time, like 150 years ago, that was something that I found particularly frustrating. This characterization of atheists as being that kind of naturalist just inherently, which is just not true. I mean, there are plenty of atheists out there who don't believe in any gods, but who seem to believe every other piece of woo-woo fucking nonsense under the sun. Just to point out, the algorithm doesn't like when I say stuff like that. Like, share, and subscribe. And please pray to the algorithm for my channel's soul. Thank you. You can probably imagine in my line of work I've spoken to quite a few atheists over the years. Not in real life, in chat. I'm an internet person, don't expect too much. And I've met atheists who believed in souls and ghosts and reincarnation and afterlives, homeopathy, Reiki, and that's just the relatively mainstream stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Paris Tosin guy that I've made some videos about, the guy who believes we live in the 23rd century and should be cooking with nothing but microwaves and a bunch of different politicians or androids. As far as I can tell, he's an atheist too. I think he's explicitly said there is no God. Then again, maybe he's not the best example because I think he thinks that was all accomplished technologically. It can be hard to pin down.
Now, if you adopt such a view or such an outlook on life, what implications does that have on us, on our personal life?
You mean as opposed to adopting some kind of mainstream religion? I guess in this case specifically Islam? Well, plenty, most of the time, I would imagine. You're not going to be going to a mosque every whatever day. You're not going to be putting your forehead on the floor unless strictly necessary for some reason. If you're a woman, you're not going to be covering your face or your hair, at least not because God told you to. And you're not going to spend an awful lot of time agonizing about what God wants from you and what some angel threatened you with and that kind of thing. But yeah, obviously there's going to be some sort of lifestyle difference between a hardline naturalist atheist and a hardline practicing Muslim.
On more of a sort of deeper level. That's what I want to explore today. Now, you may look at me and you may think, you know, this guy's Muslim, he's been brought up in a Muslim family, you know, what does he know about atheism? What does he know about, you know, the denial of God or living a life in the absence of God?
That would be a thought that would occur to me. I have to say, though, that's not just some random prejudice. That's based on an awful lot of experience, not just with Muslims, but with lifelong, fairly religious people in general. I've come across an awful lot of really strange misconceptions in my time, ones that bear absolutely no resemblance to anything that I believe, feel, or do. So I think it's fair for me to be a little bit skeptical that you know what you're talking about on that issue. But the distinction you made at the start there was a good start, so I'm optimistic.
Well, I too, you know, for a long part of my life was in the position where I lived like an atheist. I lived like a naturalist. You know, I lived like someone who couldn't care less about the existence of God. I wasn't even engaging with the question of does God exist. I wasn't interested, right? I wasn't interested. I didn't want to know.
All right, see, now I'm starting to get a little bit worried. The problem is you might be perfectly sincere saying this, but just because you think that you lived like an atheist or like a naturalist doesn't mean you actually did. I mean, for the people who actually pay attention to this stuff, how many conversion stories have you heard from Christians, Muslims, whoever, who don't even just say, I used to live like an atheist, but say, I used to be an atheist because I hated God and I was mad at him for killing my mom in a car accident, and therefore, because I was an atheist, all I did all day was do drugs and drink. And then you instantly realize that person's totally full of shit. I'm not saying that's what you're gonna do, Imran. Like I said, I'm optimistic. I'm not going into this making stupid assumptions like that. I genuinely have not seen this video. I'm doing a little different format here this time, just kind of recording this as I go along, and then I'll edit out my constant repetition of lines that I fuck up, and my ums and ahs, and the 30,000 different versions of everything I want to say that don't work, and that I have to redo.
And that outlook had implications. Whatever views we adopt, whatever beliefs we hold on to, they have certain implications whether we like them or not.
Not 100% of the time, but you're speaking casually. There's absolutely no reason for me to be that nitpicky. And in the roughly speaking sense, I very much agree with you.
So if we adopt atheism and we adopt naturalism, those outlooks, I know some atheists don't like to call them worldviews, right? It's just a lack of belief, as they say. But whatever the case, whichever way you want to see it, if you adopt the view that there is no creator, there is no God, and you maintain this positive outlook, that means it has implications.
Of course, whichever one it is, either you don't believe there is a God or you believe there's not a God. Yeah, I mean, that's going to affect the way you see things relative to how someone who believes there is a God would see things. Atheism doesn't have commandments, it doesn't tell you what to think, and it's not a very comprehensive set of ideas. It only really addresses one thing. But when compared to the way that a religious person thinks, an atheist is, in a lot of ways, in a lot of circumstances, going to think quite differently. Just the same way that someone with a strong political ideology will think differently from someone who just doesn't really have any engagement with politics. Unless the God that the person you're being compared to believes in is very, very remote, like a deist God, then it probably has no real implication at all. I suppose you might have to talk to that person a little bit to see if their belief in a deist God informs their interpretation of really anything at all. If they're prone to thinking differently from you on any topic on that basis. I'd say it's pretty unlikely, but who knows, I guess. But definitely when it comes to a God like yours who literally wrote a book and gave it to you, and you have all these rituals and social beliefs and ideas about the supernatural and all that stuff, yeah, that's going to affect the way you think and do things. Just to be clear, though, it's not necessarily going to affect you the same as the next person, and the lack of that belief is not necessarily going to affect an atheist's way of thinking the same as the next atheist. But the presence or absence of a belief in a all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, command-giving, stuff-doing God is a pretty major distinction between two different brains.
Now, the implications I want to look into, the first thing I want to look into is the whole idea of purpose. Now, who here has thought about the purpose of life?
Me, although probably not in the way that you're thinking. The extent of it for me has basically been in internet arguments with religious people, arguing about whether there is some objective transcendent purpose to life and what the hell that would even mean. But I haven't sat around wondering, what is the purpose of life? Because to me, that's just a nonsensical question. It's a nonsense question about a nonsense concept.
That shows us how innate of a question it is to human beings, how natural this question is. Philosophers throughout history have engaged with the question of purpose.
I know. Weird, isn't it? Philosophers really have a tendency towards mental masturbation.
Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And what's interesting is as human beings, we live with purpose on different levels. But every waking moment of our existence is purpose-driven. So we get out of beds in the morning for a purpose. We have a breakfast for a purpose. We brush our teeth for a purpose. We leave our houses for a purpose. We dress in a certain way for a purpose. Everything's purpose-driven. The things we make and design are with a purpose. The things around us, we ascribe purpose to them.
Let's be careful with that last one. We ascribe purpose to the things around us. Well, I think that's pretty dependent on both the person and the context. I mean, setting aside the fact that some people assign some kind of objective purpose to everything, typically the people who think God created everything for a purpose. People who don't believe in God also tend to see through this purpose-driven lens when it's necessary. That is, when they personally have a purpose to put something to. If you're not in need of shelter or tools or food, you might just walk through a forest and think, how nice, I'm enjoying this. No real purpose ascribed to it, just sort of drinking it in mindlessly. But as soon as you find yourself stranded out in that same forest, and you have to build a shelter, and you have to build a fire, and you have to get some weapons and kill some rabbits, all of a sudden you're looking at that pretty forest through a very different lens. How can this stick serve me? Can I make a roof out of it? Can I make a bow out of it? Can I start a fire with it? Purpose. That's the only one that you said that I have any objection to, and even then that's not major. The other ones were you get out of bed for a purpose, you have breakfast for a purpose, you brush your teeth for a purpose, leave your house for a purpose, dress a certain way for a purpose, and make and design things for a purpose. And exactly, we came up with the idea to do these things, make these things, because we have a purpose for them. We get out of bed because we gotta do stuff, to live, to make our lives better, in your case to pray to God, whatever you do. We have breakfast because we know that's gonna make ourselves feel better when we're going through our day. We brush our teeth because we figured out it's good to keep those things clean because otherwise they can get rotten and it hurts like hell. We leave our houses, again, because we came up with things that we have to do. We dress a certain way because either we don't want to get cold or because we came up with some sort of cultural admonishment about it. And we make and design tools and whatever else because we have some sort of a need or a want for them. Every single one of these things are purposes that we made up. These purposes don't exist at all except as part of our worldview. If we cease to exist, so do they. It seems to me that purpose is the same sort of thing as value. It can't exist independently. Something has to have a purpose to someone. Something has to have value to someone. Purposes don't really exist in the world as such, and yet there they are. There's no need here for, and as far as I can tell, no presence of, any sort of objective, transcendent, divine purpose to any of this. Maybe you believe differently. I know that there are beliefs about some of these things in Islam. But from where I'm sitting, these look like things that we gave purposes to serve very basic human needs and wants. Just to get on by.
Yet when it comes to us as human beings, we somehow tend to think that we don't have any purpose.
Well, that's not true. Anyone who's ever been labeled a human resource knows better. That's a joke. But at the same time, there's a fragment of my point in there. I mean, everything you listed there that has a purpose was given a purpose by us. And just the same, we can see ourselves or others as having a purpose to ourselves or to others, or not. We can also see no purpose to eating breakfast or brushing our teeth. But I have this feeling that you're doing a bit of an equivocation here. You started off talking about purpose that human beings ascribe to things. But I think you're about to switch to talking about the religious kind of purpose that God's put onto humans. Even though you've implied that the first kind of purpose is perfectly adequate for everything other than humans, you're probably going to imply that only the second kind of purpose is important when it comes to people. But just because someone like me would say that there's no supernatural assigned purpose from a god, does not mean that someone can't assign purpose to their own life or have purpose assigned to their life by other people, from which they derive just as much personal fulfillment. I really hope that you're not going to try to conflate these two very, very different types of purpose.
Or at least we start looking and searching. Because there is an innate sort of yearning that what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why do I exist?
Again, though, in what sense are you talking about? As a lifelong atheist, I have literally never wondered what my purpose is to a god. Frankly, even if tomorrow I found out there was a god, I wouldn't necessarily even give a shit what it thought my purpose was. Really depends what I thought of the god, at the end of the day. I mean, I guess I might want to know what it thought my purpose was just to avoid, like, getting infinitely tortured in hell. But that's the only reason. It's purely self-interest. I really would not care emotionally what the feelings of this fucking monster are. But again, it really depends. Like, if it was some super nice kind of god, and he came down and he talked to me, and he went, "Hey buddy, listen, I know I'm kind of late on the introductions here. Sorry about that. I've been watching the whole time and I totally could have done it, but I just didn't feel like it. I was busy. I was playing Candy Crush, sorry. But listen, I'm the one that made you, and I know that you don't think you have any objective purpose. And okay, yeah, fair enough. That's true. It's kind of my subjective purpose for you, but I think it's a really cool purpose. I think if I explain, you'll be really into it. Just give me a chance." And he goes on to explain, and like, I don't know, it's some wicked art project or something. I don't know what he says. I don't know what it convinced me, but at the end of it, I'm like, wow, now that's an elevator pitch. Good idea, bro. Holy shit, I'm on board. High five. Then, what was I talking about?
And that question is a very, very important and profound question, brothers and sisters and friends.
I disagree, at least in the context that I think you're getting to, but, you know, you're entitled to your opinion.
And like we've seen already in this room, every single one of us is engaged with that question at some point or the other.
Of course they have. It's a religious question, and you're talking to the Islamic Society.
And I too engage with that question. Being someone that was completely disconnected from God, couldn't care less. My life, I lived like an atheist, right? I just lived day by day and did whatever I had to do. But at one point in my life, in my teenage years, I started to ask these questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What's it all about? What's my purpose?
Well, there's your problem. Ask stupid questions, get stupid answers. Sorry, that's mean. I have so much less inclination to be a mean asshole nowadays. At least when I don't think people really deserve it. I am like full-on dad mode right now.
And I realized that the outlook, the worldview I held onto at that time didn't provide me with answers. It didn't give me answers. I couldn't find the answer.
So like I was being a little flippant with the stupid questions thing. Based on what I've seen so far, I think maybe you deserve to be taken a little more seriously than that. I do think they're the wrong questions. I don't think they make a whole lot of sense. But as far as questions a teenager might ask, I guess they're fine. I don't necessarily think they're stupid questions, especially, you know, teenagers tend to have a lot of trouble trying to figure out where they fit in amongst other people and in society, you know, overall. And in your case, I guess in the whole universe, which again, something that never really occurred to me. I mean, I live on Earth with a bunch of other people. If I'm going to worry about where I belong, I'm going to worry about where I belong in all that. But the way you phrased it, and the fact that you still seem to think about it kind of in the way that you phrased it, does make me have to bite my tongue a little bit. You were asking questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What's it all about? What's my purpose? And the concern is that the worldview that you had at the time didn't give you answers. I guess just on a silver fucking platter. It seems to me supremely childish to expect to just be given answers to questions like that. To have them just come to you from somewhere else, someone else. And again, I can understand a teenager thinking that way. But the problem I have is you seem to still think that makes sense. And how old are you? Like, I don't know, 30? It just seems like a really childish, entitled attitude for someone your age. Just expecting someone else to hand you the answer to every one of your questions. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not presenting this as an argument. I'm not saying, you sound like a teenager, and that means you're wrong. That'd just be stupid. I'm not really trying to argue about it as such. It's more just to express what's making me raise an eyebrow about it on a personal level. You're talking about your personal experience. I might as well talk about mine.
And I realized, I sort of made those logical connections that if there is no God, or even if there is and he has nothing to do with this existence, this creation, he created it without teleology, meaning without any purpose, without any significance, then there's nothing behind it. It's all one big accident. It's important to understand this. As soon as you deny God and you say there is no God, there is no creator, or you adopt a type of naturalism, a philosophical naturalism, that means that everything is a result of what? Blind, random, physical processes. It's all one big accident.
Okay, in a really reductive kind of sense, sure. How is that relevant to our day-to-day lives? How is that relevant to how we see each other? How is that relevant to whether we assign purpose to ourselves the same way we do to the things that we use? We're still perfectly capable of doing that, in exactly the same way, the exact same kind of purpose. If it's valid for everything else, why isn't it valid for us? You were kind of complaining at the start that we don't treat ourselves the same way we do getting out of bed in the morning, or eating breakfast, or making tools. But we can, and if we do, then we've addressed your complaint, right? We're now doing what you think we should be doing. Consistently applying purpose.
And what's interesting is as human beings, we live with purpose on different levels. But every waking moment of our existence is purpose-driven. The things around us, we ascribe purpose to them. Yet when it comes to us as human beings, we somehow tend to think that we don't have any purpose. That's essentially what we're saying. There is no creator, there is no cause, it's one big accident. And what does that mean? That means everything in existence, everything we see around us, including our own selves, we are all one accident, which is one big accident.
Well, in that reductive sense, so is the fact that we get out of bed in the morning. So are the tools that we make, the clothes that we wear. If everything is this big accident, how can you say that these things are purpose-driven? How can you say that there is a purpose to these? But you did say there is, a purpose that we gave them. We injected our purpose into them. But as much as we're accidental, if that's the way you want to frame it, so are they. So is everything. Literally everything. So do the tasks that we perform every single day, leaving the house, getting dressed, having breakfast, simultaneously have purpose and not have purpose? Simultaneously are emotionally fulfilling and make us feel like they matter, and also totally unfulfilling, irrelevant garbage? If it's the result of a big old cosmic accident, then fuck it. Do you see what I'm trying to drive at here?
It's like spilt milk. That's all it is. And if that's the case, then where is the ultimate purpose? There isn't any.
Sure, but in that case, there's no ultimate purpose to anything. And why should there be? What you were complaining about was that we see the things we do and the things we make as having purpose, and we don't see ourselves as having purpose. But there's absolutely nothing stopping us from applying purpose just as real and relevant and meaningful as that to ourselves. Nothing at all. We are agents who can see purpose in things, assign purpose to things, have purposes for things, so we can do that, no problem. That's one thing we can do just as well as a god can. The only complaint is that it's not ultimate purpose, by which all you apparently mean is instead of being purpose that we gave ourselves or other people, it's a purpose that God gave us. I don't really see the difference. I don't really see how one is inherently better or worse than the other, except maybe in the fact that the purpose God gives you is given by some remote, invisible entity, and the purpose given to you by other people, say, is a purpose given to you by someone who gives a shit enough to show up and interact. And I wouldn't characterize either of these origins of your purpose as ultimate. I don't see how you could characterize something that's been decreed as also being ultimate. I don't see how the purpose that someone, something has for you, wants for you, insists on putting on you, is ultimate in any sense. Doesn't matter if that someone or something also happened to create the universe. To me, ultimate means something that's so fundamentally true that it's true even if God says it's not. Or if he just ignores it completely and doesn't give a shit, like some deistic God.
Accidents don't have a purpose.
Sure, I can accept that in the sense that, by definition, it didn't occur because someone had a reason to make it occur. But again, this shifting of what you're talking about. You started out talking about people having a purpose. And you said if there's no God, people don't have a purpose because people originated by accident. And accidents don't have a purpose. Well, sure, but we're not talking about accidents. We're talking about people. A thing is not its origin. Look it up in your thesaurus. Human is not listed as a synonym for Big Bang, with good reason. To say that the non-purpose-driven origin of, like, atoms means that nothing has a purpose is like saying a wrench doesn't have a purpose because it's made of a bunch of metal that just happened to be in the earth by accident. But that doesn't mean the wrench has no purpose. It doesn't even mean the metal has no purpose. It means the presence of the metal was not purpose-driven. The action of it getting there had no purpose. But then we found the metal, and we, on purpose, started making wrenches out of it. And now we see that one purpose of the metal, to us, is to be used in wrenches. And we see the purpose of the wrenches as being used like wrenches are used. Sure, the ultimate origin of the materials was ultimately purposeless. And sure, just because we made it for a purpose doesn't mean that the wrench has some ultimate purpose that will outlast us. But we're not talking about wrenches in terms of the ultimate origin of atoms, and we're not talking about ultimate purpose. At least I'm not. I'm telling you things don't have that. Now, obviously, this is an example you could object to. I'm giving a very utilitarian view of purpose with this, but we don't have to assign the same kind of purpose to everything. Yes, we see metal as just a thing to use and a way to make things and do things, and obviously we don't tend to see people that way. Most of us, unless we're total assholes. The people around us have very different purposes in our lives, purposes that we attach much more importance to, and which is much more personal to us, and which we put much more emotion into, but it's the same general thing. Human needs, wants, feelings, thoughts drive the way we view things, drive what we think those things are for, what we think we're for, what other people are for, which often is deeply tied up in how we make each other feel. This kind of assignment of purpose is often reciprocal and extremely emotional. And personally, I find that kind of purpose far more meaningful and fulfilling than this idea of deriving purpose from being a cog in this bizarre dystopian machine of a universe dreamt up in the mind of some unfathomable entity that isn't even part of the universe, let alone my world or my society. To think that that's the only kind of purpose that it's important for me and other people to have is so cold and desolate and lonely and depressing. It's such an, I won't say anti-human necessarily, because we're not talking about hell, but a-human worldview, lacking any of the reality and warmth and sincerity of the human mind. To me, it's like trying to derive some sense of fulfillment and emotional satisfaction from an echo across a chasm that's so wide that you can't even see the other side, as opposed to getting the same thing from what your family, your loved ones, your friends, and yourself express and feel right next to you, or that you feel yourself. But, you know, you do you. Now, I feel like I barely bit into this video here, but I feel like this is a good place to end. I don't know if I'll come back to it and do some more of this one. We'll see, I'll figure it out. But I gotta say, so far this is actually kind of pleasant. My balls don't feel too cold at all. Come on in, the water's great. If you liked the video, if you like what I do generally, subscribe, give it a like, share my videos around. I don't think I'm being recommended all that much these days. It's hard to say for sure, but my channel hasn't grown in a while, so you sharing my stuff is really helpful. If you want to get early access, I have an email list at list.logicked.com. Really helps if you sign up there. If you want even earlier access, I have a Patreon and a Subscribe Star, where I also have lots and lots of exclusive videos. And if you want to chat with me, I have a Discord. Thanks for watching, stay safe, have a good one.